If you don't know me, Calvin Mitchell. Been with the Department of Education for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I was appointed as the director probably like 8 months ago, and just been trying to hit the ground running, trying to create opportunities. I will tell you, this is not a victory parade for me. This is not a victory parade. This is not me coming up here saying, look at all the good things we're doing for small businesses, because I'm telling you every day it's a fight. Every day it's a fight, right? And I know I have to call people from different numbers because they're not gonna pick up my calls, right? They're like, Calvin, man, I don't wanna have to do another meeting. I don't want to do another event. But that's what I'm doing, right? I'm in the face of the politicals. I'm in the face of the career senior executives, my colleagues, because you guys matter, right? And I always say, HUBZone is one of my favorite programs. Don't tell Scott, but it's one of my favorite programs because it's immediate impact, right? The work that you're doing, the contracts you're getting directly into the community. It's like, hey, you want to build America back? This is the way to do it, baby. This is the way, all right? This is the way to do it. Before I got here, I sent an email out because there are some changes, potential changes for small disadvantaged business goals, right? And I'm trying to grease the skids, right, for my folks, because we really got to push the envelope. My whole mantra, hey, we really need 2 or 3 year strategy of how we're going to get from where we are now, which is not a good place. It's not terrible. It's not a good place either, because if I'm meeting small business goals, but I'm under the 23%, I'm not really winning, right? It's almost like when I beat my son who's 8 in Madden, right? Madden football, for those who may not be familiar, video game, right? My son, he gets, oh, Dad, how can you beat me every time? Man, I'm 30. Like, I'm old. Like, you don't know what you're doing, really, right? So I always beat him. So it's kind of like that, right? Like, how can you really celebrate if there's more to be done, right? And so that's why I need you guys, and that's why I felt it was important for me to be here today, because I really need you. We suck win in the HUBZone category, but I want it to be more strategic about it. So I have slides, but I may or may not use them. I'm probably just going to talk through.
Can I just ask you a question?
You sure can. Is it going to be hard?
Well, I hope it's not.
Okay, go ahead.
What are the HUBZone set-asides that you had in the last 5 years?
Yeah, so here's a success. Here's a success and here's a challenge. The best success that I had this year, we had 2 HUBZone set-asides. One was, I think it was like 300 million HUBZone set aside for cybersecurity. So I was happy about that. Then there was another one that was smaller. I think it was under 50 million. And it was also cyber IT related. 15 million, there you go.
It was 300 million?
Yeah.
As a HUBZone set-aside?
Yep. Now, I got some flack on that because it was service disabled veteran-owned small business before that. And they switched it over, partly because I've been really boasting about how much the HUBZone program is important, right? And I mean, I lay it on thick, like, oh, think about, I always tell this story, right? I say, hey, you know, I grew up in a HUBZone area, right? And I think about all the jobs that went away, but imagine if you had the ability to influence it. And like I say all this, right? And the people start to get all excited and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do it. Well, I didn't think they would change the requirement, right? They changed the whole requirement. So it's a success for HUBZones, right? And I forget the guy's name. I met him at a HUBZone conference maybe 2 years ago, but they were actually one of the awardees. So that's a success. But prior to that, it was really dumb luck. It was like, requirements come out and it was a competitive. And I don't like that, right? I'm like, we really should be at a point where we know where we spend our dollars, right? We know where we spend our dollars, what NAICS codes. I can look and see how many HUBZones are in a specific category. And in fact, I did just that. And I think that was part of our success. I said, okay, so hold on, let me see, did I? Because you already know what that stuff is. Okay, this is where I want to start. So this is where we are. So when I got into the job, our small business goal was 16%. Before that, in 19, it was 30%. So you might be saying to yourself, well, how did you go from 30 to 16? This is where I want to tell you a little bit about the department. Department of Education, I'm a numbers guy. I said, the only way I'm going to make my small business goals is if I only talk to people who are spending money, right? Now, we got plenty of program offices. It's not that I don't like them, but I don't really care as much about a smaller program office as the big one. There's top 5, right? Federal student aid, 75% of obligations in the last 5 years. So who do you think I spend the most time with? Federal student aid, right? That's where my bacon and my grits are, right? I'm gonna spend all my time there, right? But guess who was the hardest nut to crack before I got there? Federal student aid. Federal student aid said, hey, we got our own authority to do a lot of work. They got their own CIO. They're basically like an agency within an agency. And when I got into the role, I said, hey, there's no possible way I can win, and I got the heavy hitter not really on my team. It's not gonna work, right? So the first thing I did was I said, hey, we gotta meet regularly, right? Because 75% of this spend is coming from one office. Then we looked at what they were spending. Majority of their money is financial services, right? Professional service, there's a lot of IT service work. I like what you said earlier. She said, hey, why would there be a HUBZone product-based type contract? I agree with you wholeheartedly. I even get on them about location, right? Does a location really matter? Most times, not really, right? But it does matter for HUBZone companies, so always hark on that. So with federal student aid, 75% of the contracts, I'm gonna go through, I have some spend data in here too, but the contracts that they had were mostly in private collection agencies, right? Hopefully you don't know who they are, right? Because those are the people that come knocking and say, hey, you're defaulting, right? We're gonna try to help you out, but we're probably gonna take your money, out of your paycheck, right? Garnishing your wages, so on and so forth. That was $500 million a year that was no longer represented in 2020 because they phased out, right? So when I first started work with FSA, they said, hey, Calvin, federal student aid has a success story. We had all these private collection agencies that are no longer small anymore. I was like, what are we celebrating? Like, that sucks, right? Because now that's $500 million that are no longer in a small business program. They were like, well, don't you want them to graduate? I was like, no, not really. I want them to stay in a small business. I want to cultivate small businesses, right? All right, so because of that, I had to go back to SBA and I said, hey, about those goals. So I know we did 30 last year, right? What if I say it's impossible for me to do 30? Oh yeah, how about 20? How about 16? Didn't go well. And so back and forth, they agreed to 16. Last year, we didn't even make 16, right? They underestimated how much spending was really going out the door. So much so I said, okay, I will negotiate a lower goal for this year if you promise to get on board with a plan. And they said, okay. I said, this is the plan. I'm gonna have at least 3 trainings for HUBZone. And they were like, what do you mean? I need everybody, every single staff member in your office, contracting, cores, everybody. I want them all to learn about what the HUBZone program is. The first one we had, Michelle did it. And I'll never forget when we had the training, Michelle said, hey, you guys, there was a contracting officer that made an award, right? And she shot out this contracting officer and said that what he did. That is the same exact contracting officer that moved the contract from Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business to HUBZone. So if you don't think these trainings work, they do, for sure. So we did 3 of those. The other thing I said was, we need more industry days, right? We need to talk directly to the HUBZones, the HUBZone community, to talk about what we do, right? Because what we do is somewhat not clear enough. So we had 2, which in times past, they usually would do 1, right? It was a big thing. But here's the nuance. I said, okay, so if we are doing professional services and IT services, and that's a preponderance of our work, why are we opening it up to everybody? Why aren't we just saying, hey, if you do IT or professional services, you only need to come, right? If you're doing construction, we really appreciate it, but we don't have a need, right? Now, you can't kick people out or uninvite people, right? You could do that for your family barbecue, possibly. But the drunk uncle, it's kind of hard for him to go away, right? But this is what I was doing. So that way it's more targeted, right? Because I don't want people to come in and people come and say, hey, my name is Frank and I have a plumbing company. Well, Frank, you kind of wasted your time. You should be over at the Corps of Engineers, right? So we started doing this targeted approach. Federal student aid, 75%. Next comes Institute for Educational Science, 13% of our spend. So if you're doing the math, 75%, 13%, what does that make up? 88. So 88% of our contract spend is with 2 offices, right? So I'm giving you some intel, right? So if you see federal student aid, if you see Institute for Educational Science, those are pretty much our big offices, right? Working with them, they hadn't had a HUBZone in like 3 or 4 years. No, like 0 contracts awarded to HUBZone. Okay, this is a problem. Meet with the senior leaders. What's the story? Well, Calvin, we do statistics, we do analytics, and there's no HUBZones that can do that. Based on what? Well, we just don't. We're
Deep past performance with Department of Education. I have been up in that office, probably talked to you, talked to everybody. They're like, even the primes are like, oh my God, there's only a really special way to collect this data set that is an Excel file size. I was like, give me a break, right? Like, we have tons of people who process data all the time.
mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, it's extremely hard. We had put RFI after responding to RFI, we had phone calls, and it's like nothing.
So,
And I get lectured by everyone about how special and unique and hard it is there.
but here's the thing. It's not.
I know. We know that.
It's not. I'm like, look,
It's data.
I did weapon system contracting and we did HUBZone contracts. We're collecting data from schools. Like, seriously? Like, what we're doing is not that specialized, right? And these are PhD level people, right? So they're kind of like looking down at their glasses on Zoom at me, right? But this is my challenge, right? So what I do is I say, I need some set aside contracts, right? Because this is unacceptable, right? And it's a little uncomfortable, right? Like, I'm a big dude kind of yelling, hey, this is unacceptable over a Zoom call, right? Gets a little uncomfortable, but I do it anyway. So what happens? Well, Calvin, now we're thinking we can do a small business set aside. Oh, really? Okay. In IT. It's like, no. Like, I like that, but I don't, right? Because would you say your core mission is? Statistics and analytics. So why can't we do your core work, all right? That's like you inviting me and say, Calvin, you can only eat the macaroni and cheese, okay? You're not having the ham, all right? The ham is for us. You eat the macaroni and cheese. We're not doing that, right? So what I did was I called every single large business that they had on their rolls. RTI, Research Technology Institute, which is actually a nonprofit. which is interesting. And then AIR, which is American Innovation Research, I believe. I can provide that. And then WestEd, all right? Call them up. I said, hey, so this is the funny thing. I kind of lied, right? I didn't even look at their subcontracting. I said, hey, man, you got to do more with subcontracting. What do we need to do? I said, do you know Michelle at the HUBZone Council? No, we don't know her. Okay, you need to know her. So we set up a meeting, right? Now I didn't look at the numbers, right? I don't know what they were doing, but I figured it probably was bad, right? But what they did was I learned so much about what they do and what could actually go to small businesses, because there is some work that is like national, right? Where it's harder you would need a lot of partners, but we can get there, right? But they were talking about specific work that they do. So we're doing that, relayed that to the IES office, and now we have an IT-related statistics small business contract that's gonna come out. I say all that to say that we are far from perfect, but you guys are very helpful to me, right? Because what I do is I'll call Lily, right? Hey, Lily, this is what they're saying. Does this make sense? Oh my goodness, that's the biggest bunch of crap I ever heard, right? Okay, right, then I can go back, right? And I can push back. So everybody, I want you to reach out, right? And let me know what areas you want to work in, right? And do I pick up my phone?
Yes.
All right, do I pick up my phone?
Immediately.
Right, okay, so
Calvin, can you tell us more about that IT statistics? Was there an RFI for it?
no, they're still planning it.
Okay, so the RFI hasn't come out.
Hasn't come out yet. What I'm trying to do is get it to, I'm trying to get them to do a complete set aside for a specific social economic category. But they're still waffling whether or not it's going to be single award or multiple award, right? And this is a thing that I'm not sure if other agencies deal with, but this seems to be like a complete fallout every single time we get to this point. I can get them to the small business part, but they always like, oh, multiple award. Ugh. They start the hand wringing, right? But I like the multiple award, but I see the issue. We don't always do multiple award the right way, right? There's one contract we awarded and it was like 16 offers. That one, like 16? The contract wasn't even 20 million. Like 16? Like you're fighting over peanuts. No, right? So there's some work that we gotta do. There's some work we gotta do. So right now, for this year, we are on track to exceed the 14%. The HUBZone, we are slowly approaching 1%, which makes me really angry because I told you how much work I've been doing in that area. That BPA I told you, they haven't put out enough task orders. So it's one of those things where you celebrate, but then you don't, right? Because if I don't get task orders, I really don't care, to be honest. I mean, I'm happy, but I don't care because what I don't want is a hollow contract, right? So what I'm going to be looking at is more set-asides for 2022 and more task order related type contracts because they like the fast, easy schedules, NASA soup. They like they weren't even using the NIH contract until I introduced it. So that's what it is. But what I'm trying to work on, and I think more agencies should leverage this, is with the category management, if you do a small business set aside that the whole department can use, then you can get the credit for it. So that's another area in which I'm trying to make some influence. Okay, so here's why I say I need your help, all right? I had my team draw this chart, right? And this is what I call my shame chart. And what the intent of this chart is to shame my colleagues. I'm serious. I really want to shame them, right? And so the way I do it is I put charts like this in senior meetings. Oh man, they get really uncomfortable, right? Because I say, hey, you know what? Remember I was telling you guys the historically underutilized business zone and how it's like really at the forefront of Build Back America Great, right? Or not America Great, let me not do that. Build Back America, right? Right? And I say, you know how I say that this program is like they directly invest in the community and it's a great program? But look at our blue bar on the bottom. It's almost like, unless it's blown up like that, you can hardly even see it, all right? And then I say, so what are we gonna do about that? Well, how do we figure out what hub zones are available? This is the way we do it, right? This is where engagement starts, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the partnership is gonna happen, right? But this is my good shame chart. And I want you to show, I'm being honest, because at some point, that blue is gonna be bigger than all the rest of the boxes, right? I truly believe that if we keep at it. But here's the behind the veil. Now I wanna give you a caveat. This is as top spending by NAICS code. This is for all spending. And I say that for two reasons. I want you to know exactly where we're spending our dollars, because if you don't fit in here, don't take this the wrong way. You're no of use to me, right? I need folks that are able to participate in this marketplace so that way I can go back and challenge, right? And when I go ahead.
Sorry, are you going to share this with us? Or?
I think the slides are in the app or whatever. I haven't did the app yet.
Okay, good.
You know how they say it's an app for that?
Yeah, then after that.
I never remember my iPhone code, so I don't do a lot of apps. And if so, I can give you my email. I will gladly send this to you because you guys are my community. You are my customer, right? And that's kind of how I see it. So the top bar relates to mostly private collection, right? Or collection type work, right? Here's the future. 2021 and 2022, the top two will definitely be similar. But I'm not sure if they might switch. If you do some research on the Department of Education, next generation financial services was introduced under the last administration. And their approach was, hey, you know what? We shouldn't have like private collection agencies and we're running kind of clunky, right? How can we streamline it? So their thought was, hey, we have too many basically businesses that are doing this type of work, this financial management. Why don't we consolidate it? Which I wasn't in the room. I'm just telling you how this happened. What if we consolidate this so we work more efficient, right? And in most cases, that sounds good, right? Except they said one bad word. What was that? Consolidation, right? That's a cuss word. I'm offended deeply, right? I feel like I'm personally attacked when I hear that term. So when the new administration came in, I said, hey, there's next gen that's happening right now. And I'm gonna be honest, it's only gonna get uglier for small businesses unless we do something. They're like, really? It's like, yeah. Like, I think if the less opportunities, right, it means you're gonna probably rely on some big conglomerate to do the work. And we can't have that, right? Not when small business have been doing the work in the past. So they're like, okay. So now we're at the point now where I'm not 100% sure what direction they're gonna go into. However, we're developing a plan for sustainable growth. And what I mean by that is we're gonna be looking at these NAICS codes, looking at the small businesses that fall into these NAICS codes, and how we can develop contracts that are 5-year contracts, right? Where we can rely upon these contracts because we know the history of our spend, and we can more accurately predict what our small business opportunities are gonna be. Does that make sense? But I also put this out here because I wanna be very transparent, right? Because when you see a requirement that comes out under these NAICS codes, you won't be like, oh, well, I wonder what this is all about. No, it's a part of, I need you to reply, right? I heard before, right, and I've heard this before, that some people say, hey, Calvin, unless it says HUBZone, I'm not going to respond. If you could please reconsider. Because what ends up happening is on the back end, I say, hey, man, why'd you go with like service disabled veteran, or why'd you go with women-owned, right? We don't need any help in a women-owned small business goal. If you're a women-owned small business, it's not a slight. I'm just saying we don't need any help in that category. And they say, well, Calvin, no HUBZones responded, right? Or not enough responded. So then I say, well, I know people who do this work, and I'll call them up and I say, hey, Lily, how come you respond? Calvin, did say HUBZone? Like, why waste my time and dollars if you're not going to set it aside? Well, because if you don't respond, I can't influence them to set it aside. Now, if the requirements are too crazy, right? And I've thrown a red flag before, right? There was an RFI and they were asking for past performance for the past like 6 years, and then there was something else crazy. Then there was like, I don't know, there's like, it can't be no longer than like 10 pages. I'm like, for an RFI? Like, this is crazy, right? So I went to the contracting officer. I said, we can't do this anymore. Like, this is crazy. What are you doing with all this information? Like, how does this help you, right? And at the end of the day, they were awarded, they were going full and open. So I'm like, what's the point? Why waste people's time? If you're gonna do that, just do it, right? And cut out the mess, right? So again, sometimes the shaming actually works, right? Because now they're like, they sent the next RFI, they sent it to me, say, hey, Calvin, what do you think about it, right? And I didn't even read it. I just said, I think you need to work a little more about making it efficient. And they did something.
Now, I see those numbers up there, but with Biden's forgiveness program, do you think that's going to move money?
So remember I was telling you this is not a victory lap, right? So here's the other challenge, right? So I also use this to say, hey, these are where subcontract opportunities are as well, right? Well, here's the problem. So when they did the loan forgiveness, the subcontractors are the ones that are actually kind of doing the work, right? They don't get paid unless they collect. That's the business model, right? So through this whole forbearance thing, which is pretty good, right? My sister was like, oh man, I hope they keep this riding. I'm like, no, they're not. We got to get back to it at some point. So you got to pay your loan. So they're not getting paid, right? And they don't get new work. So they're not going to incur more work and not get paid, right? So there's the downside of it, right? Which brings me to another point. Don't be afraid to reach out to me if you see something on fire, right? Because small business called me and she was in tears, right? And I'm like, who is this? Like, do I have a baby out there or something? What's going on? And she's like, no, I'm a subcontractor, and like I got to get rid of like people, and this is what's going on. And she was right, like, and I didn't know, right? Called Federal Student Aid. Hey, I need to get on your calendar. And we were not only able to help her in the situation in which she was in, but we were able to find her other opportunities, other subcontracting opportunities on other contracts. So don't feel like you can't reach out to us, right? Or reach out to me, because we can definitely try to make things happen. Okay, so this goes back to what I said before, which is don't give me set-asides for work that's not core work, right? Now, if you look at this one, you'll say, hey, Calvin, the numbers are considerably low, and okay. And the NAICS codes are different. You notice that? The NAICS codes are different. So, and collection agencies, remember I was telling you the private collection agencies phased out? That number, 142, was 6 million in 2019. But those private collection agencies, those companies phased out. So now we're at 142, right? So for me to get back to the glory days, I got to figure out how to take that previous slide and those NAICS codes and build similar contracts, right? And that's where we're at. But I always want to show this so you can kind of see what it looks like right now, right? And so you can still marry, because this is what I know for sure the department is comfortable in setting aside, right? Now, the other stuff, don't worry, I'm fighting them. But right now, this is where the opportunity is current, right? So this is our baseline, right? Essentially, this is our baseline. We can only go up from here. All right. So here is the Hubzones. So here's the silver lining. It's not like janitorial or like that kind of stuff, right? Which annoys me to no end, because I hear that and I'm like, I feel personally attacked. Like, don't ever, like, if anybody ever says that to me, that's like a trigger. I just start, I start twitching, right? I try to not be crazy for a little bit. But this is a good thing. And this is also illustrates the relationship that we've built over time with our CIO office. Our CIO office has a really strong relationship with us. Here's a caveat. Federal Student Aid also has a CIO. Have you ever heard of an agency with two CIOs? No, that's crazy talk, right? But only in education. We got two CIOs. New CIO, her name is Mia Jordan, but she's a good small business advocate. So what I noticed is when I was looking at the data, I was like, whoa, the CIO is doing well. But the CIO is not really that big, right? They only represent, I think it was like 3% of our total spend. 3%, right? Federal Student Aid, their CIO represents a lot more, right? So what we're going to be doing more of is those small business contracts. And that $15 million that came out from Federal Student Aid was really all about what we've been doing, about developing those relationships. Something else that was really, really weird at education, Federal Student Aid wasn't awarding a lot of 8A contracts. I'm like, why aren't you awarding 8A contracts? Oh, well, we had a bad contract several years ago, so on and so forth. I'm like, yeah, but you ever had a bag of chips? Who likes potato chips? Am I the only? Yeah, okay. You ever got a burnt potato chip in there? Whoever says I'm not going to eat the entire bag because I eat because I got one bad chip? Nobody, right? Well, you get one burnt chip usually in the bag, right? But for some reason, it's this perception, right? So you're having a fight against this perception. And so what we're doing is we're doing more myth busting, right? And part of the way I've been doing that is I've been doing the conversation with Cal. And what I do is I invite a successful small business or a business that used to be small that's no longer small, and I invite them in. I did that really to help other small businesses to see how people become successful, what pitfalls they have, but I also invite program offices. Because then when they sit through the presentation, they're like, wow, man, they were doing some large contracts. I was like, yeah, why can't they do your requirement? All you're doing is data, right? It gives me that credibility, right?
So does FSA have its own computer systems?
Yeah, So a lot of the systems that run their platforms, all their whole system is completely different than the department. So that's good for you to know, because again, there's the FSA, the Federal Student Aid, they have their side, their systems, and then they call us Big Ed, even though we're really smaller than FSA, but they call us Big Ed. It sounds kind of cool. So that's why I try to make it clear, right? So if you're looking at a requirement, you're kind of figuring out, oh, maybe I should call Jason Gray, the CIO. You probably shouldn't. You probably should look and see if Mia Jordan is available for a conversation. Does that make sense? All right. So these are some of the big contracts that they use. If you can see, can you see where I got a huge problem and where I started getting upset? The first one is CIO SB3. And then look at CIO SP3 small business. Look at Oasis unrestricted. I'm like, you guys are squandering opportunities, right? Like these companies are companies that are well vetted, so on and so forth, right? So even if you said, hey, Calvin, I'm not that sure about small businesses, there's no, like, you can't convince me in any shape or form that anybody in these contracts aren't already established, right? So what I do is, this is another one of my shaming charts, right? Where I say, look at this chart. What work could go in the the regular contract that couldn't go in the small business? And you know what the crazy part is? Some of the contracts they're awarding were small business under the unrestricted pool. We're just doing dumb stuff, right? And we got to get better. But I'm showing you so you can see that if you have partners or you're on these contracts, these are where we do use a small business. What you don't see is the schedules.
We are fresh stars 3.
Fantastic.
So that
And we're gonna get 8A stars training, 8A star 3 training, I think it is in October, 1st of October. So this is something that I've been doing. So I'm well aware there's a CIO SP3 unrestricted contract. They don't know anything about it, right, from me, because all I've trained was a small business, right? And we're doing 8A stars, right? So, okay, if you want low-hanging fruit, that's cool. I'm gonna bring them here. We're gonna train. We're gonna get one-on-one support for it. All right, so how do you do business with us? We have a forecast. If you look at it now, it's probably gonna be slim pickings, as my grandma used to say when I used to come for seconds. Slim pickings, that means there's not that much on there. There's not that much there. One thing I will tell you, 75% of our contracts are awarded by June 30th. Our fiscal year end is actually June 30th, not the end of the year. I mean, we do have an end of the year, but those are like, late funded requirements. But when you look at our forecast, keep that in mind, June 30th. I have my team put up a subcontracting list that we keep up with. If you don't get a response from a subcontractor, call me directly, and I will call them immediately. You remember, you ever watch In Living Color? They used to say, like, homie, don't play that. That's kind of how I roll, right? Like, we're a partner, right? Like I always say, we're an ecosystem, right? I need you, large contractor. You need me as government, right? Because I could pretty much screw you up, large business, right? And then we need small business, right? We're all in an ecosystem, right? So we all got to play together. If you're not playing together, either the small business, like there was one guy, he was just rude, right? I get that, okay. But if, you got a legitimate requirement, you're a good business, and they're not responding to you, homie, don't play that. Let me know. We're gonna run it up the pole, right? Micro purchases. We have executive officers, and the department has delegated authority to program people who are not 1102s, not contracting officers, to make purchases under $25,000. Sometimes it's a little higher. But those executive officers are able to make those purchases. They're called micro purchase. I couldn't put 25,000 because then somebody would say, you always get one in a crowd that's like, hey, the micro purchase threshold isn't 25,000. So I'm telling you, it's 25,000 for us. So if they see something and you're like, or you do something and you want to get connected with one of our offices, you can let us know. Okay, so everybody run out. Nyla?
We're in it.
Okay, all right, okay.
Training, to make sure everybody's in.
Okay, so you know what I'm cooking, right? So this is a tool. HHS also has this too. I'm not sure what they're doing over there, but I know they have this tool as well. I know because we share it, right?
Yep, separately.
Oh yeah. I mean, we don't want to be connected to them. It's an unhealthy relationship. Get it? Okay. No, seriously.
They're not training their program managers to use those.
I know. I don't like.
I'm
So
pushing a net at NIH to start doing that. We're setting something up to start doing that because what good is putting the data in if they're not using it?
yeah. So
It's
and
like wasting our time.
yeah, I've heard that. So this is the way I use it, right? So you can put in capability statements, you can put in past performance, whatever you want to put in there. I went to the head of contracting activity for FSA, then contracts and acquisition management, and I said, hey, I got this system. How can I get 100% of your people in there? They're like, well, I guess if you put CLPs, we can push it. I said, okay, that's no problem, right? Continuous learning points. So I did that. And we got probably 95% of our contracting people in there. We're a little lower on the cores, probably around 50%. But we're also pushing this tool constantly for market research because I want them to find you in the tool, right? And that's kind of like the first line. And it's easy, right? Because more than likely, if you put in a NAICS code, and you can put in a NAICS code and let's say HUBZone, it'll bring up like all the HUBZone businesses that are under that NAICS code, right? Now, it's a little misleading because not everybody under there does that, but they don't need to know all that. All they need to know is they went in and they found some sources, right? So then they come to me and say, hey, Calvin, could you do a deeper market research for me, right? It's been really helpful in me starting a conversation and being able to really get us to that point. So please, 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 if you're not registered, be like my friend right here. Make sure you register. We have trainings. I told my team.
Calvin shamed me, and I just want to tell you, Calvin's serious. So I put my stuff in there, and of course I put my deck in there. And Calvin's like, we don't want a deck. I want a 2-pager. Let me show you what you need to do. And so I was like, oh gosh. And you know how you're too busy. It's like, I can't go back to him without fixing this problem. So of course I created a 2-pager. And not only did I parlay that 2-pager to Calvin with his critique and saying it's fantastic, but my HBCU clients, in order to get into NIH's program, we used the same framework and they all got in. So he will shame you and let you know. He'll look at something and he'll give you feedback in 15 minutes, and then you got to respond in 24 hours because he's gotten back to you so quickly. So if you do not want to do your homework, do not contact him because he'll get back to you way too quick. I'm like, this email ain't even read yet.
Yeah, I rock and roll. Like, if you're not ready to rock and roll, if you're just thinking about it, if you're just thinking about contracting, because once I'm on it, right? So I'm serious. Get in, get registered so we can rock and roll. And we have these trainings. I told my team, I said, hey, we're not going to have a system and nobody knows how to use it, right? So my team has regular trainings. They report back to me how many trainings they do, how many people are trained, and if we increase our number of businesses that are in there. All right, so we have industry days. Again, our industry days are pretty targeted. This year we also had a subcontracting event, which was something different for the department. But I really felt like it's a way to hold people accountable, right? Because if you come and you present, right, and you say, hey, I'm available to help you, and I call you and you don't, right, like that's not accountability, right? So then you call me and say, hey, Calvin, I'm trying to get a hold of so-and-so. I can call and say, hey, man, I thought you said you were going to be a partner, right? I don't mind shaming people. Like, this is my thing. I kind of like shaming, all right? So, but what I will say is we have a limitation on how many people can register on these events, right? So if you don't get on it quick, you might try to register and you may not be able to get in. Sometimes I'm able to sneak people in the back door. Sometimes I'm not because they say, hey, Calvin, you said you had 300 registered, but we see 400. So you're letting too many people in the back door. Okay. So I had the team work on the website to try to make it more user-friendly because I thought like it wasn't before. So check out our website and give me feedback, right? I want you to hold me accountable. If you think that it's not, hey, Calvin, NASA has this on their website. Now, NASA is pretty cool. Like, So I may not be able to step my game up to NASA. I might not be able to level up like that. But if there's information that they have or something that we could use, let me know. All right. And then, so I do one-on-ones personally. And apparently my other OSDBU colleagues don't do this. OSDBU directors don't meet, which I feel like is kind of unfortunate, but I want to keep coming to the OSDBU council meetings and I want to get unfriended. So I'm not going to say anything about that, but I do meet, right? So if you call me and say, hey, Calvin, can we meet? We're going to meet, right? Sean, right? We're going to meet, right? We're going to talk, and I'm going to give you honest feedback, right? Because this is what happens. I'm in a senior level meeting, and someone says, hey, I need attestation services. And I'm like, what in the heck is that, right? But what often happens is I meet somebody, right? And they say, hey, I do attestation services. And at that time, I was probably like, what the heck is that? Now, just me, I can remember, oh yeah, I think I remember a company doing that. And I can go in and search and remember, or sometimes I'm old school. I still got like a notepad that I write down stuff. And I can go back, and there's been a lot of times people have gotten opportunities just from me hearing something and me being able to make connections. So I prefer to meet with companies just because I feel like it's better. But my staff tries to protect me because they know I'll talk to everybody, so they put the general email. The only difference is it's calvin.mitchell@ed. All right? But I love one-on-ones because my goal, and I put it in my performance plan last year and I do it again, is I want to have, 15 companies that I just meet, get contracts, all right? So that's why I want to meet you, so I can get you in a good position, because if I'm not getting you contracts, like what's the point, all right? If I'm not getting you contracts, what's the point? So, one more other thing I'm trying to do is the performance plans of all the senior executives don't have small business goals, right? So I got one office to get performance plans for all the senior executives, right? And they're like, oh, this is crazy. Like, who thought of this? And I was kind of trying to be quiet. I turned my camera off in the Zoom meeting, right? Because I know Calvin probably did it. I turned my camera off. Yeah, but so they're all engaged. I mean, it works so well. Everybody is engaged now in the Office of Financial Operations. I just got to get the rest of the offices' performance plans, but I'm working on that with the Deputy Secretary. So I can have all the senior executives accountable for small business, so they're all, accountability works, I'm telling you. Okay, so this is my team, a small but mighty team. I always say, you might have heard me say that this is the dream team. If you're old enough to remember 1992 basketball, had the dream team in the Olympics. It makes my team feel good too, because they're like, oh man, that's pretty cool. Calvin thinks I'm like Magic Johnson. Right, but there's also a Christian Laettner on that team. You remember Christian Laettner? Everybody hates Christian Laettner. Okay. For those who are sports fans, you'll get it. But that's my team. And on their performance plan, they have to be responsive, right? So if they're not responsive, you let me know, and I'll make sure that they're responsive, okay? Here's some resources. And I think that's it. Does any man, I could, man, you're like,
I've got an Uber to catch.
okay, quick.
Great presentation, Calvin.
Thanks.
I'm a HUBZone company. We've been subcontractors on those debt collection contracts.
Yes.
2 separate contracts.
Okay.
So we've been on it for 8 or 9 years. The small business restricted contracts are expiring in June of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also currently subcontractors on 2 of the next year contracts.
Fantastic.
for HUBZone.
Okay.
And we want to grow from the subcontracting into Hana.
Could you call me?
That's why I wanted to raise.
Yeah, so I like to name drop, right? And I have no problem saying, hey, I know we got contractors that can do this because his company does it, right? And then they're kind of like, oh, well, I guess we can't really fake it now, right? Yeah, you can, right now.
I've got to go flap my wings.
All right,
Thanks.
catch that Uber.
Appreciate it.
I would give you a ride if you were going to Bowie. All right. You are? You need a ride?
My wife brought me over the bridge.
Oh, man.
Somerset section.
Oh, no. Anybody else?
Charlie Russ, All Native Group. 2 questions about the industry days.
Mm-hmm.
When is you guys have any idea when the next HUBZone one is? And my second goal for that is there any 8A specific ones? Because we're 8A in HUBZone.
You know, I don't do 8A, and this is the reason why. So I'm going to say this, and I hope it doesn't sound abrasive. I don't feel like we need help in the 8A,
Fair enough.
right? Because I can market 8A easily without doing an industry event. I'd much rather spend resources in areas where I feel like we need the outreach. Now, that's not, like I said, I've been pumping 8A pretty hard, and we do 8A training. And it's amazing to me how many people have never done an 8A contract. I'm like, that's like the easiest contract to do. Like, it's kind of where you cut your teeth, you would think, right? But for some reason, it was unfamiliar with them. And I actually introduced what's called a 8A, I call it an 8A model, where we take in the 8A, right? We're tracking them through kind of like the life cycle through the contract. And then there's something on everybody's calendar that says it's going to expire in 12 months. So either figure out if they're still certified or who they work with that we can leverage, right? So we can have an incumbent cultivate it, and it's not some kind of weird relationship, right? Because I hate to go to 8A and say, hey, you know, the company still wants to, the customer still wants you, but you're no longer 8A. Oh, but I know at 8A, and you're like, Calvin, I don't know this dude. Like, why do you want me to force a relationship? I don't want to do that, right? It's easier for me, at least I find, is if I ask you, well, what other 8As you work with, or do you have partnerships with someone else? Because then it's easier to kind of keep the relationship going, and sometimes, you know, personnel and some of those things makes it a little more easier. So the short answer to the question is no. And I definitely don't think I'll be doing it in 2022, because I will have a larger focus on small disadvantaged businesses and still probably not so much at 8As, because again, I don't really feel like I need help in the 8A. I've been pretty good marketing them with no problem and selling them. But HUBZone and Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business for some reason has been a challenge for us, even with Vets 2 or Vets 3. Is it Vets 2 or Vet 3 now? It's Vet 3, right? Is it Vet 3 or Vet 2 still? I don't remember. Whatever vet number we're on. To me, that should be easy. And I don't know why we don't have a government-wide HUBZone contract. It just seems silly. Anyway. Huh? Oh, yeah.
But that's probably 2-3 years out.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And I like that flavor of contract, and I'm trying to do something similar at Ed, but I'm not sure if we're there with the technical, how a polite way to say that. I'm not sure we're really there. We're ready for that type of contract. Complexity. Any other questions?
So I made note of the list of contracts you mentioned,
Mhm.
and they're talking about in the future. What if you only have a schedule? What if you don't have those contracts?
What if you don't have a schedule?
No, what if you only have a schedule?
Then contact me directly, because I have no shame in telling people, my contracting officers, let's do the rule of 3. Now, you're not going to see that in the FAR or anywhere else, but GSA has the rule of 3, right? You just need 3 quotes, right? And you can move. If time is of the essence, whatever your company is and 2 others, let's move it, right? I do that a lot, right? Especially when they come to me and are like, oh man, we need tight timelines. Why don't we just use an existing large contract? No, we can get a schedule awarded in a matter of months or 2, or 8A is in a month. So please. And in fact, I tell people sometimes, if you got a schedule, lead with that, right? Because that's helpful for me, because that helps me to market your company. The Lily's got her mask back on, so I guess it's time for me to wrap it up. The mask is like the new, you know how people used to rattle their keys, like, they would check their watch. All right, so Calvin.Mitchell@ed. Email me. I will respond probably within a couple of hours, within an hour or two, and we can meet. Please, please, please be interested in it. Pursue our work because I need you. All right? Thank you.